Following Tina Turner, I have to admit that not every morning is as good as this one. To be honest, it's fairly difficult and hard these days to stay positive and keep that energy. I mean, if you're anything like me, and I really believe that you are, your whole professional identity is based on you're a problem solver. I'm a problem solver. I'm a fixer. I'm here to build society to be better and better every day and every day. And then before I go to work, I open up the newspaper and it kind of hits you. It's the pandemic. It's a war in Ukraine. It's geopolitical tension. It's all of that that combines into this kind of emotional baggage that I think many of us do carry with ourselves. We've all known the saying that where there's a will, there's a way. And increasingly in mornings, I kind of feel that there's all the will in the world and there's all the ambition, but where is the way? What's kind of happening on that? So I'm not here to bum you out before lunch. That's definitely not my mission or requested talk. I'm actually here to tell you what motivates myself, what brings me up in the morning, and how I find hope in new economic thinking. If we look at it not only on the emotional side, but let's look at it more analytically. So the things on the wall, I mean, we all know that we're living in a moment of repeated, constant, interlocked, multiple crises. We all know about these. This is not the kind of point of my talk, but everything in our world is now kind of interwoven into climate change, into geopolitical thrift, into political tensions that kind of are erupting around the world at the moment. And then the issue is that we still tend to, while we know that they're kind of interlocked, we tend to treat them as single, insular challenges. We try to work on one, and then we move on to the other. Then when this has been solved, then we move on to the other. But that's actually not how it works. But we have to see the kind of core issues and the core problems beneath the symptoms that we're working on. This is why I'm a bit worried at times that there's a risk that we will fail in tackling the issues we have dedicated our lives to. Well, still, let's be honest. Sorry, that was a fast one. I believe in my core that one of the core problems, not the only one, but one of the big problems that underlies most of the issues we're currently facing is actually our economic system. It's in the economy, stupid. That's kind of what I've been at least told. At its core is the point that our economic system at the moment, it creates more problems than it solves. It's that simple. Some people call it neoliberalism, some people call it extractivism. The core issue is that we've built an economic system that's based on rational individuals. It's based on competition as the primary way of interaction. It's built on growth as the ultimate objective. And then as a kind of result of this, public sector, civil servants, public officials are meant to step back and basically just let everything happen or enroll as it goes. And that's actually not what seems to work, and at least the past decade shows that that's not the model that we should be working towards. So now to the more hopeful part, what actually gets me up in the morning, which is exactly that there are a plethora of organizations working on exactly this issue, working on transforming our economic paradigm, on transforming our economic systems to the better. So a bit of background. We at Demos Helsinki did landscape research together with Laudes Foundation, together with Partners for a New Economy last fall, on basically mapping out what are the different new economic thinkers, the new economic organizations that are currently active within Europe. What we found was incredibly useful and incredibly hopeful. We found over 140 and counting organizations that are actively trying to change our economic systems throughout Europe. I know the map is only small, it's only there as a teaser for you to actually read the report, but I can highlight a few organizations. At the moment we're in Germany. So in Germany we have, for instance, the Zoe Institute, an organization that wonderfully works what they call a future fit economy and does a lot of advocacy work on the very ground levels, actually on the EU level, to change economic systems, to open up possibilities of change for civil servants and bureaucrats. The Forum for a New Economy, I know many of you probably attend their events, attend their platform, is basically a platform for making sure that there's academic rigor and kind of making sure that there's links between progressive and transformative economists and policymakers. Incredibly important work on establishing the links between the academic rigor and policy. Going to the UK, there's wonderful organizations that are actually presenting here today as well. IIPP from the University College of London, working on mission-driven policy. The Donut Economic Action Lab, working on transforming municipal and state-level policy making and governance. The list goes on and on and on and on. I'm not here to kind of present all of the organizations, but maybe to make two observations of them. Firstly, all of the organizations that we found and tried to map, they're incredibly diverse. Some of them working from a feminist approach, some organizations working more from looking at a well-being economy, some organizations very much in the political space, while some take a more sectoral approach on financial sector reform or so forth. What's more important in these organizations is actually their similarity, that none of the organizations that we found are actually, they're not content in just criticizing the current situation. They're not there to kind of show the faults. They're actually there to experiment with new economic models, to build new policy, to transform economic governance on its every level. And that's what I find exciting. On top of that, these organizations definitely try to influence power. That's kind of their raison d'être. That's why they're here. Actually, we coined them a bit misappropriately new economic thinkers, but actually they're new economic actors. They're organizations that every day try to shift policy making, try to shift governmental processes and practices through multiple different ways. I won't go through the details, but we kind of mapped it out into three, in a way, what we call tones of voices, ways that organizations outside of government influence government. They can be empathetic, they can try to convince their kind of counterparts, they can be, in a way, hackers or wolves in sheep's clothing, or then they can go into amplifying other messages and kind of being fairly pragmatic about it. But this is extremely interesting, looking from the perspective of how these organizations actually work together, because none of them actually are single units, but they create what we believe is a nascent movement of new economic thinkers and new economic actors. So, I find this inspiring, but why should you care? I know most of the people in the audience are change makers of a sort, are bureaucrats, are civil servants, are people who are actually kind of working on change on the very practical level. So at a minimum, and if you share my, in a way, angst or anxiety that I experience some mornings, not today because this is a very inspiring crew and group, at a minimum you should know that this is something that's happening. There's an increasing amount of people, of organizations, of conscious effort put into changing economic systems throughout Europe. And this is something that all of us should know. We should be aware of it. We should get to know it, just for the fact that if we don't, there's kind of a risk of becoming, the world changes under your feet. And that's kind of what at a minimum, all of us should know. But I think most of the people here are not the kind of bare minimum people. You're all passionate, you're all ambitious, and what you should remember about all of the new economic organizations is that you actually have a huge resource of people, of driven organizations, of driven people who are there to help. They're organizations who actually have some answers to the questions that most of us are dealing with every day. For instance, and these are only a few examples, we tend to think about how can governments actually invest into transformation. And at least in my kind of discussions with civil servants and bureaucrats, everyone is talking about that. Yeah, we understand that we should be investing, but then there's kind of fiscal policy rules, and then there's this and that. And there's always boundaries and structures that limit our possibilities of actually acting. There's organizations who have already worked on this, who have experimented with long-term budgeting processes, people who have kind of built the tools and mechanisms that can help you guys in your everyday work. The same goes with all of the other questions. How can economic cycles be better managed? How can climate change be mainstreamed into all of our decision-making, into the core of our governance processes? And how can civil servants be encouraged to act properly, radically? There's a bunch of you and a bunch of us that do it in spite of the structures. How could the structures support that type of transformative, bold, creative action? And I believe that the core of that is definitely in changing the way that we think about our economy, our economic systems, the back end of things, as you may. So what actually brings me hope, what brings me energy in the mornings, in the afternoons, is definitely the note that when there is a will, there actually are multiple ways. We can think about this. We just need to know who to ask and where to find the help from. So maybe the thing that I want to leave you all with is that within the audience, I know that you are all there. New economic actors, meet the bureaucrats. Bureaucrats, meet the new economic actors, because I think this meeting is long overdue. Thank you.